Hi, folks, and welcome to what I believe is the sixth in our series of, I have to keep thinking every time, the sixth in our series of Dharma Outreach, Dharma Talks. I'm here again, so you'll have to put up with me again, and Marshall's with me. And this week we have a very special guest who's even more special to me personally, but we'll leave that one alone at the minute. So Jess, thank you so much for agreeing to join us, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Great, thank you. We so appreciate you being here. Um, okay, so I guess we'll kick off with one of our usual generic first questions. um, would you mind kind of telling us how you came to find the benefits of your Buddhist practice?
Oh, yeah, sure. I love telling this story. Um, when I was really little, I got grounded a lot, and I spent a lot of time alone in my room. And at school, I had access to the library, so I did a lot of reading. And meditation was of great interest to me by the time I was like 10. So I trained myself to do this little practice to like kind of cope with some of the chaos in my life. And I would just like close my eyes and I would picture a candle, and I would picture like a inkwell and a quill, and that quill would like knock over the inkwell and it would make everything black. And that was kind of how I would go into meditation. I didn't really like understand any of the religious background to it. Um, in fact, I wasn't raised with any religion, uh, and I was quite a skeptic. And then I had tried connecting with a number of different communities that meditate, right? So of course I was seeking like Buddhist community, and I tried a couple like temples in my area. I found a lot of temples didn't like speak English, so it was difficult to like connect and kind of ask what to do and like learn that part of it. And then I found Thai massage. I was actually on my way to opening my own restaurant, and I happened upon Thai massage over like just introductory weekend. And not only did I find like a Buddhist community that I felt like I resonated with, but also I really felt natural to the work. So then um, that practice then led me to studying with my teacher's teacher in Thailand. And my teacher's teacher, Ajahn Pishat, he's I don't know, he's like a super Buddhist. He's almost half of his classroom is an altar, and he is very clear and precise about like how you are supposed to practice and what is important. And I felt really moved by this, which was strange for me because I had never connected with religion. And I was like, this is a bunch of hokey. So I started looking into it, and actually like um, how religious practices rewire and reshape your brain, right? Even if you don't buy into the religion. But from that, I found a lot of community. I obviously came and found you. I started doing quite a bit of seeking, and found quite a bit of saving in that space.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Um, yeah, I mean, I can obviously appreciate exactly how important certainly a jump Pichette is to you because well, because I've actually met the guy and been there and spent time there. Um, do you how important do you think that personal relationship with a teacher? I'm not really asking. I know I'm not asking you to go into your personal relationship with your teacher, but what I'm trying to get is how important do you think that personal relationship with a teacher, for want of a better words, how important do you think that is to someone's progression?
Huh. I think it's extremely important, and it can go in either direction, right? You can have a teacher that's kind of full of ego and power hungry that can lead a student down a really dark path. And on the other hand, you could have, a teacher that is that is just genuine and wants to share knowledge that can lead a student down an amazing path. But it's it's a very difficult community and practice and teaching to navigate without some sort of guide or roadmap.
Would you say that it's true then that it's important that both, if there's a student-teacher relationship, it's important that both the student and the teacher are prepared to respect and also to set boundaries?
Absolutely. I mean, and that is absolutely essential.
Right. I think what I'm trying to get at is my absolute distrust, and more than that, of anything that becomes kind of guru-based, where you must do everything I tell you to do, otherwise you're not going to achieve this. That's a huge red flag to me, and sometimes worse.
Absolutely. I have always lived by the best teachers are the ones that realize that they are also students. So if you're seeking a great teacher, that teacher shouldn't come across as if they know everything, that they're just willing to share what they do know, but obviously they don't know everything. That's a good teacher to me.
Right, that's interesting, because it's interesting to me because I'm sure you already know, but when I've had people ask me if I will accept them as students, I always decline and say that I learn as much, if not more, from other people. So I'll be your friend all day long, but I personally, I'm uneasy with that power dynamic. It doesn't work for me. So it's interesting to hear you say that as well. And I think it leaves the door open to all sorts of abuse. I don't mean physical abuse, but
abuses of power.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's I don't think it's healthy for either party. And I see this a lot.
So Jess, so happy to see you again. It brings back memories of Sujatu's adventures and his trajectory getting over here. The amazing service that you've done and the service that we're doing together to help so many people that are out there searching and like us and might be struggling. So I just want to pay homage to you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that the thing that resonated with me with Buddhism is I'm highly resistant of, like, as soon as I sense that type of power dynamic coming from other people, I become resistant, because like you sense that greed, because that's like a greed response, a power, like I want to have power over you. And in Buddhism itself, what I realize is it's very open. It's very considerate of other people and their freedom, and it makes suggestions. I endeavor to abstain from the use, which means I'm working on that, I've never had a traditional Buddhist teacher. My teacher was the writings, which were written down by a lot of different monks and things, and translations from old Pali texts. And the teaching was always patient. It was always kind, and it was always geared towards the individual that it was being presented to, depending on what their personal development was at the time. So I can definitely resonate with what both of you are saying, and I know Sujatu's the same way. He can be very stubborn too, and I just think in general, when people try to engage other people, with like that type of relationship, some people are receptive. Some people sheepishly come along and say, hey, yeah, great, let me follow you. And some people are just like, no, absolutely not. And I'm of the absolutely not party.
Yeah. There's it's a delicate balance, right? My named relationship with you may not be, well, Sujato, might not be that you're my teacher, but I cannot deny that 75% of what I know about my practice came from like asking you questions and getting responses from your experience, right? And Takashi, I have a friend that just recently ordained. One of the things that he said to me, because he constantly encourages me to teach, and I have like such diversion to teaching. I don't know if you've seen that documentary Kumare, right? And how people can develop that like guru feeling even if you're not trying to be that person, right? Even if you tell them, I have no power, it's all in you. That relationship still has a tendency to develop on its own. It's a really like scary thing to try to walk. So I was, adverse to teaching. And he was like, Jessica, he's like, there's a whole new generation. We cannot do this forever. He's like, how can you be so greedy to have so much knowledge and not share it? It's like, that's a really different perspective. And I think there is like maybe a cycle of like seclusion and learning and processing things ourselves. And then also allowing ourselves to like connect with community and share that information that we've learned with other communities so that they can go and take that information and make that grow, right? It's a cycle and a balance.
I think that's interesting. You mentioned the cycle there, and you mentioned about seclusion because I certainly found that the first 4 years that I spent in the forest there, those first 4 years were really beneficial, and they brought together all the bits and pieces and the weird meditation practice that I had for years when I was still running around with my hair on fire when I had hair. And doing the craziest shit that anyone could imagine. Some of it which I think I can't possibly have done that. It can't be true. I must have imagined it. But still, those first 4 years brought the little bit of good I thought I was doing to myself in the crazy years. It brought it to fruition. And the cycling you mentioned is interesting because I feel that there becomes a point where you need to, or for me, I needed to give something back. I'm pretty dismissive, really, of anyone that takes themselves away and locks themselves away for forevermore. I see that for certain people, but certainly if they are then trying to tell anyone else anything whatsoever, I have an issue with it. Because I think it goes against the teachings. I've often said this to I really should find out where this comes from. I should be able to quote the number and the passage, but I'm not a scholar, as everyone knows. But there is a passage in the canon where the Buddha says, "Let no two of you go in the same direction." And for me, that direction doesn't mean a physical direction purely. It means a direction to be available to spread some of these Dharma teachings in unorthodox ways, perhaps. I don't know. And as everyone knows, I get a lot of flack for the way I am, and I still am the way I am. And Jess, you mentioned something about 75% of well, I'm going to say that probably almost 100% of how I am today is thanks to you. So I thank you for that. And I wasn't going to do that on camera, but I couldn't resist it. I do thank you for that. And for anyone that's watching, if it wasn't for Jess, I wouldn't be sat in this seat now. We wouldn't be doing, myself and Marshall wouldn't be doing the work we're doing, and we wouldn't be reaching the folks we're reaching. So I just needed to put that shout out there. You have my eternal gratitude for that. But I'll shut up because I realise it's not. but I needed to get it in. So yeah, this whole let no two go in the same direction really resonates with me, and I really should find out so I can actually point people to it, because I can't remember. Because for me, the teachings should be available and welcoming to everyone. So maybe not a fair question, but I'm going to ask you anyway, Jess. Have you found in your kind of travels and dealings with Buddhist organisations, whether they be monastic, whether they be lay, have you found them to be welcoming and all inclusive of everyone in society, or not?
It's a loaded question. We all know
Um, the truth is, I think not everybody truly understands the practice. They think they do. Yeah, no, they haven't. I mean, no, they're not all.
I apologise. It was a loaded question, but
I agree with you, and it's worth calling attention to. I think there's a real misconception, especially among maybe the yoga community, right? That everything in Buddhism is all love and light, and nothing but positivity and tranquility and inclusive, and saying that is one thing, but actually practicing that is a totally different animal. And I think there is a lot of saying it without practicing it. I'd rather people practice it than say it.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And I'm trying not to turn each one of these episodes into a rant by me, but I need to try and get my 2-minute rant in. And yeah, I find, I mean, Theravada is my thing, but I find it harder and harder to be associated with the establishment of it, because it's been turned into something that really is just out of control as far as the hierarchy and the patriarchy. And in a lot of cases, the outright misogynistic attitude. And so I find it difficult not to call it out. And because I find it difficult not to call it out, I find it difficult to get support from it. So that's my 2-minute rant. I'll stop. I apologise, Marshall and Jess. I've got my 2 minutes in. So,
you know what? I'll speak quickly on this, and Jess, Sujatu, both what you were saying brought to mind is what I've noticed is a lot of different Buddhist organizations, communities, whatever. It seems like the way that they market Buddhism, from my Western experience of being out here in the world and experience Buddhism, is it's always come for a meditation and then leave, come for a day retreat, a silent day retreat a lot of times, and then leave, come to this retreat, as if they're trying to make Buddhism it's something separate, it's separate from your everyday life. But if you're a practicing Buddhist, Buddhism is life. It is your everyday life. It's your community. It's how you behave in society. It's how you treat other people. It is your life. And that's one of the things that I struggled with being a Buddhist, learning from the Pali canons, and then riding, that ultimately, everyone knows I did prison time, riding my bike around because that was my first vehicle, and being turned away from certain places because either they were having a retreat or they just weren't having visitors at that time, or the time I went to shake a monk's hand and he pulled his hand away from me. Going to meditations and then everybody just getting up and leaving afterwards. So it was just really lonely, and it was completely contrary to what I had expected. And it definitely motivated me to try to create something that was more community-based, more focused on inclusion and helping people not only connect to the teachings, but connect to the practice, something that they can do for themselves in their everyday life.
I think that's it. I think really that it's the practicalities of it that you know, that kept me sticking with it, and that brought me to it. And that was interesting, Marshall, what you just said about the, you know, the coming for the few hours or the weekend and going away again, because that just sprung. And I've not thought of this before until you said that, but I guess it's kind of like, for a lot of people, I don't know, going to a ball game or going to watch a movie in a theatre or going to the opera or whatever your thing is. And I guess that's very true, and I hadn't thought about it before. It's an interesting one. That's something I'm going to think about. That's something I'm going to think about. Maybe I could start a kind of stadium movement with some razzmatazz and hot dogs and beer in the bleachers and things like that. This might be a
Franks
good
and
sales
beans.
pitch.
Buddhism, Franks and beans and Buddhism.
But no, it's interesting. It's an interesting thought, and you know, the three of us were sat here laughing just this second, and I think that's a big thing for me as well. There's a lot of very, very serious Buddhists walking about with faces like slapped asses that really like, you know, and there's no need for this, you know. There's no need for it. Nothing says you can't be happy. Nothing says you can't. It's just weird, and I'm rambling, so I'm going to shut up. But it's all about the practicalities of the practice, for sure. For sure. I mean, you know, I've said it before, but it's probably not too much of an exaggeration to say that my practice in one way or shape or form probably kept me alive. So that's a bonus for me, and I think that's the case for quite a few people. And I think it's important we give people the opportunity to at least experience these tools. I think there's a lot of gatekeeping goes on. I think there's certainly a lot of gatekeeping goes on, which is, you know, really one of the things that we're trying to break down with this whole Dharma Outreach project. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Buddhism is, in my opinion, is less of about being a religion and more about being like a way of coping with what life has to throw at us. It's self-care in its most basic form.
I think that's certainly very true. And although we all continue to use the word Buddhism, I find myself moving further and further away from even using that term. When I can remember, and when I think people understand, I consider myself to be a Dharma practitioner, because for me that cuts out a lot of the, I was going to say cultural baggage, and that's unfair and probably not the right thing to say, because that side of it means a lot to people. But I find in the West that there's, you know, in the West with Westerners, there is a lot of cases of it being very close to just cultural appropriation. And I'm not, you know, I'm not saying anyone does that with that intent, but it really is kind of coming across that way in a lot of cases in the West here. But yeah, it's those practicalities that really have been important for me, and giving folks the chance to actually be aware that these things are available, that we're allowed to do this, that it's okay. Yeah, you're allowed to sit for 15 minutes every day, 10 minutes, whatever you want. You're allowed to do that for no one else and nothing else but you. And that's tough for some people it's tough for some people to even get that 15 minutes or 10 minutes. But it's also tough for a lot of people to know that they're allowed to do it, that you are allowed to do that. You don't need anyone's permission, you're allowed to do it. And I think that's, you know, I've found that to be an issue, especially with a lot of folks in the West. And I mean, that's one thing I tend to focus on with people, saying you're allowed to do that, you're allowed to take this time and see where it goes.
So, all right, given that two of the best people I know are in the room, right, I'm going to pose a question to you, Jess, and I know it's going to get them riled up. Right?
I'm in.
And so it's like, and it's something like, and it's really pertinent too, because it's like one of those things, like being Dharma followers or practitioners or Buddhists or however we label ourselves as following this practice. We'll catch judgment too, like, you know, like I could be like, I'm a Buddhist, and they'll be like, oh, Marshall's cussing over here. Oh, like, look at Marshall set a hard boundary over there. Like, look at the way he's behaving, or he got excited. You know, like they might judge me, you know, in some of my behaviors of being un-Buddhist, but the reality is Buddhism has kept me clean and sober for 8 years. Buddhism has kept me from committing any other egregious crimes like I have in the past. Buddhism has given me a guideline to follow as far as moral practice and you know, meditation and reflection goes. It's given me a life that I could have never dreamed possible. You know, so like we, you know, as Buddhists, it's a process. It's progress over time, and we learn and grow. And I think sometimes people are just, they don't understand what we practice or follow, and so they're immediately to judge some of like maybe our, you know, bad behaviors or whatever you want to call it. So there was an individual on one of the larger Buddhist groups who had seen a monk going into the movies. He was going to watch a movie, and he'd caught him. So he caught him on camera and like made a big to-do about it, you know, like, look at this, I got him, you know, as if to like shame him, you know, and he was going to track him down and, you know what I mean, make a official complaint to the monastery and all this stuff. Like, how do you feel about that? Like this kind of like the judgment, you know, coming within our circles being Buddhist practitioners?
Mm-hmm. This is a difficult spot for me, I'll be honest. There is somebody I've been following that there's a lot of evidence that they're not a monk, but they are claiming to be, and they're hosting these retreats, and they're taking people's money, and they're influencing a lot of young, impressionable minds. And in that respect, I think it's really wrong.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like, I guess one thing I've always known is that monks are just humans, right? Like, just because you have taken a vow or claim yourself as a monastic does not mean that you do not have like human needs and human functions, and you know, like, you don't just automatically become this like enlightened being. I will often tell people it is a practice, not a perfection, right? We are all practicing.
I think that's interesting, because I have huge issues with anything that like the first issue you're saying. The issue with the guy who might or might not be, and he's taking advantage of people financially, then I have an issue with that. I also have an issue with the cock that put the picture on the on the internet, which, I dig into these things, wasn't even a photo of the said incident. It was a stock photo that he found off of Google, right? But that's another matter. You know, the poor lad lives on his own in his mum's basement, and you know, that's like, what else can we say about that one? But I think it's been a little bit more serious. I think you're quite right. It is a case of, for me, if I'm happy for anyone to do anything they want, unless they're causing obvious harm to themselves or to others. Other than that, you're fine with me. I do have issues when there's people taking, that are taking advantage of folks.
Well, that's harm. If you're taking advantage, if your intention is wrong and your motivations are selfish and greedy, and you're deceiving people, right, and you're lying to them, then that's harm. That's harm all day long.
Yes, yeah, yeah. But and I have to kind of rein myself in, and I'm not the Dharma police by any means. in fact, if there was one, they would have been knocking on my door more than once.
Yeah, you're more like the Dharma rebel.
I don't know. I think it goes back to. I think it goes back to the let no two go in the same direction for me. I like to think I don't do any harm. And if people just happen to not like me, I've had plenty of people happen to not like me. I really don't care about that. This really doesn't bother me. It's just it is what it is. It is what it is. But it's certainly an interesting subject. It's certainly an interesting subject. Jess, we're I kind of knew we could probably go for hours here. I try and keep this to half an hour. So I think we probably should do that. Is there anything going on for you organisation wise that you want to plug, or anything at all? If not, that's fine, but if there is, then by all means shout it out.
I think I would just like to say, like, as much as there are a lot of not so great or organizations that take advantage of things, if you look, there are also really niche communities that offer some great support. There's a activism in Buddhism group, which I really love, a queer Buddhist group that I really love. There is community out there. It takes a little bit of digging to find like the right people, but like once you do, it really makes a difference.
That's great. Thank you. Well, I think we probably should cut it short. Jess, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, because I'm sure we could carry on at some stage later on in the year, would you be prepared to come back and do another one for us?
Oh, of course. I love you. I come back
Thank
anytime.
you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to shout it out again. Folks, if it wasn't for Jess, I wouldn't be sat here and I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing. So, thank you. And
you don't give yourself enough credit.
I love you. Take care.
I love you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you both.